addressable advertising appears to be coming into its own. There are a lot of experiments going on the local level and on the national level. From your perspective, from your part of the business, where do you see the growth going for addressable advertising? Are we there? Will it take a while?
I guess I would hypothesize that it'll take a little while for it to become widespread. I think it will grow continuously over the next several years. I think the one thing that no one knows for sure is, it's great to talk about segmenting your target more finely and targeting ads specifically there, but you still have to have some broad-based messaging to keep your brand name out there. So it's what's the right balance between a very heavily targeted message at high loyal or likely switchers versus a more broad-based campaign to maybe try and get some people to buy your product or consider your product that aren't currently aware of it, or may as their life evolves or different things changes consider purchasing the product. So I think there's still a lot to learn about the balance between addressability and more traditional broad-based advertising.
So Mike, in addressable advertising, you were saying that you had some thoughts and questions. Let's throw them out.
Sure. So if you in the way advertising is bought and sold today on more of a national media basis anyway, you buy a spot, it runs to potentially runs to all viewers of that network. But when you start thinking about carving up your inventory, more like the internet is bought and sold today. How you price that becomes an interesting question, and if the spots are still going to be sold the way they are today, as opposed to more of an auction-driven model like internet spots are primarily sold, I would think that networks and/or agencies are going to need some relatively powerful tools to figure out when they're asking for a certain segment of a given population, what increase over the average CPM should they be paying, or discount to the average CPM should they be paying, given who they're trying to reach relative to that total population. And same on the network side, what premium or discount should be charged versus what's going to be left for me to sell. And I would think that's one of the reasons why it's going to take a little while to adopt addressable advertising on a mass basis, because those business models, that are driving $70 billion in TV sales sometimes are slow to change and evolve, and that's a relatively drastic change to how things are done today. So I'm curious as to how some of these early adopters with NVIDIA and so forth, how they're building some of the infrastructure and people planning to leverage that, how it is as they start to segment their population given certain advertising requests, are going to figure out how much to charge for that versus what's not. And I know MSA is interested in helping people solve that problem. We do interesting work there, but I'm not hearing a lot about how they're going to do it. I just hear that they want to do it, not that they figured out how to optimally price their inventory given those challenges.
So do you think that addressable advertising will be more of a local phenomenon for a while as they work out the issues nationally of how to parse out and charge and post all the different segments of the audience?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess the challenge is, as a percentage of total dollars spent, national consumes a lot more of the money than local does. So it's a good question. I don't know. I would think that would make a lot of sense to do some test and control in various local markets, and MSA does a lot of market matching where you can do one thing in market A and a different thing in market B, and because the markets are similar, we can try and help you measure the results. How much people are willing to kind of experiment that way versus just wanting to dive in is always an interesting observation we make. So it would seem to make a lot of sense to test it out at a local level and try and get a handle on those things, and yet people seem more apt to want to just kind of dive in and do it at the national basis if they believe they can be getting a strategic advantage on either side, the network in terms of more optimizing the revenue they get for their inventory, or the advertiser in terms of getting a premium audience for the cheapest price possible. So you would think local would make the most sense, but it's not clear that that's what's going to happen.
So, Mike, I hear that MSA is involved in some form of out-of-home measurement. Can you talk about that?
Certainly. So, as we were talking about earlier, a lot of people focus on the set-top box data, but there you're still only getting the in-home measurement. We do a lot of work with Arbitron and their personal people meter data to help get a better understanding of the out-of-home viewing and, who are the kinds of people watching out of home, and how should you be incorporating that into the overall audience when you're selling an ad on a given network and it happens to have a large out-of-home viewing audience. How do you incorporate that into the purchase of that ad instead of just letting that audience go when it's not currently measured by Nielsen? And just stretching that a little further as video gets delivered on more and more mediums, people aren't necessarily going to be sitting in their house watching all the time, whether it's on an iPad or on their mobile phone or in an airport or in a bar where a television's on, wherever it may be. You'd like to incorporate as much as possible the total viewing picture of that audience and incorporate that in the buy in whatever fashion that's possible. So MSA, tries to work with as many different data providers we can to help advertisers or networks get a full perspective on where their video is being viewed and by who.
Are you able to post on it?
That's not really our decision. Could it be incorporated into post? Certainly. I think, it's ultimately up to the advertiser through the agency and the network whether they want to incorporate that data or not, but it can be done.